I got home to find Rusty gone, and my mom didn't even blink when she said, "We sold it. Your brother's kids needed new phones. You'll be fine." I remember asking once, "Where is he?" And they laughed like it was a joke I was too sensitive to understand. Something inside me snapped. I'd been living there only because my breakup left me scrambling, and even then I was the afterthought, the helper, the grown daughter who should never expect anything back. Rusty was the only thing that felt like home. He was my quiet shadow, the dog I rescued when no one else wanted him, and now they treated him like he was an old appliance they could trade for convenience. I stood there while Colt bragged about how he finally got the boys the phones they deserved, and my mom rolled her eyes at how dramatic I was being. I didn't shout or cry. I just went still. That silence scared them more than anything. They didn't realize it, but that was the moment I stepped out of the role they'd shoved me into my whole life. I wasn't going to beg them for answers or comfort. I wasn't going to let them decide what mattered to me ever again. I went to my room and the emptiness hit me all at once. Rusty's blanket, his toys, the quiet space where he usually waited for me. I kept replaying the way my mom said, "You'll be fine," like losing him shouldn't hurt. That night I started digging, listening, putting pieces together until I figured out where he'd been taken. Every second that passed sharpened something inside me. I wasn't just getting my dog back. I was taking back every part of myself they'd stepped on. And when I finally found him and brought him home, I already knew the next part was coming. They were going to scream, and for once I wasn't going to shrink. I walked through the house still trying to process what they had done, but the more I listened, the worse it got. They hadn't simply traded Rusty for quick cash like they made it sound. I heard Colt bragging on the phone, talking about how the man planned to flip Rusty for profit. A backyard breeder. Someone who saw him as inventory. My stomach dropped. They didn't just hand him off carelessly. They sent him somewhere they knew would use him. And when I stepped into the kitchen, hoping maybe there had been some misunderstanding, my mother just smirked and said I needed to stop acting like that mattered more than real family. Colt chimed in, laughing about how he'd done me a favor, how I should get over it. It felt like watching every childhood memory replay in fast forward. Her always choosing him, her brushing off anything I needed, the way responsibility automatically fell on me but praise always went to him. The same pattern, just bigger this time. They didn't care how much Rusty meant to me, only how he could benefit them. I realized the betrayal wasn't sudden. It was the final straw in a lifetime of being pushed aside. I kept quiet because arguing with them was useless. Instead, I moved through the hallway slowly, listening. Colt's voice carried from the living room as he called the man again, confirming Rusty had already been picked up. He even joked about how desperate the buyer sounded, how he should have charged more. That was all I needed. The name. The town. The fact that Rusty was still within reach. I stayed out of sight until the call ended, then walked straight to my room, shut the door and grabbed my bag. I didn't bother packing anything except my wallet, my keys, and the old folder where I kept Rusty's adoption papers. Every movement felt cold and deliberate. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't give them a single word. As soon as the sun went down, I slipped out the back door, avoiding the creaky step my mother always complained about. The air was freezing, but adrenaline kept my hands steady as I got into my car. The address I overheard was 2 hours away, but I didn't care. I was going to that property no matter what kind of person was waiting there. If I had to confront someone dangerous to bring Rusty home, so be it. I'd already lost too much to stay scared now. The road felt endless, nothing but dark fields and broken fences until the GPS finally pointed toward a sagging metal gate. The place looked abandoned, but the faint barking in the distance told me otherwise. I pushed the gate open and followed the sound until I saw the rows of crooked kennels behind a leaning shed. That's where I spotted him. Rusty, shoved into a filthy enclosure, his fur matted, his body shaking so hard I could see it from several feet away. The moment he recognized me, he pressed himself against the wire, whining in a way that cut straight through every bit of anger I'd been holding in. Before I could reach him, a man stepped out from the shed, Ward Kellum. He looked me up and down like he'd been expecting someone desperate. When I said I was there for Rusty, he smirked and claimed the price had gone up. He listed off random fees, pretending it was business, but he knew exactly what he was doing. I didn't argue. I opened my wallet, transferred every dollar I had saved, and didn't break eye contact once. He took the money with the same careless shrug someone would give a vending machine. As soon as the gate clicked open, Rusty launched into my arms, trembling so hard it felt like he might fall apart. I held him close, murmuring whatever I could manage while I snapped photos of the kennel, the condition he was in, the timestamp on my phone, and even the wad of cash word counted in front of me. When he mentioned Colt and my mother by name, bragging that they knew the deal, I discreetly hit record on my phone and let him talk. Every detail mattered now. I carried Rusty to the car, settling him on the blanket I'd kept there since the day I adopted him. He wouldn't let go of my sleeve, and honestly I needed his weight just as much. Driving away, my hands shook, not from fear but from the flood of relief and rage mixing together. I kept glancing at him in the rearview mirror, promising him silently that he would never end up in anyone else's hands again. Whatever came next, I wasn't backing down. I had him back, and I had proof. I slipped into the house long after midnight, keeping the lights off so no one would notice I was back. Rusty stayed pressed against my leg as I headed straight for my room, grabbing a duffel bag and shoving clothes inside as fast as I could. I thought I could be gone before anyone woke up, but the floorboard in the hallway creaked, and suddenly the living room lights snapped on. Marla's sharp voice cut through the silence, followed by Colt's heavy steps. The moment they saw Rusty behind me, everything ignited. Marla's face twisted, and she started shouting that I had no right to take back what they already handled. Colt pushed forward, accusing me of ruining his chance to make more money and yelling that I needed to hand Rusty over immediately. He even reached toward him like Rusty was some object he could claim again. Rusty growled low, and I stepped between them without saying a word. Their anger kept rising, both of them talking over each other, insisting they had every right because they'd made a deal. Colt demanded I open my hand and show him the keys so he could put Rusty in his truck. Marla kept insisting I was being ungrateful, that I had no idea how much trouble I was causing. I didn't argue. I backed into my room, shut the door, and clicked the lock before they could push their way in. That only made it worse. They pounded on the door, shouting threats, demanding I come out. Rusty pressed against me, shaking, and every hit against the wood made him flinch. The noise was relentless, rage, entitlement, and pure loss of control echoing through the walls. Listening to them scream, all I could think was how clear everything finally was. This wasn't about a dog. It was about power, about the way they had always expected me to fall in line. But I wasn't that person anymore. Not after everything. Not after seeing how far they were willing to go. I held Rusty close, waited for the house to quiet just enough, and knew this was the last night I would ever spend under their roof. By morning, the house felt like it was holding its breath, but the quiet didn't last. Marla cornered me the moment I stepped into the hallway, her voice soft at first, acting like she was the one who'd been hurt. She tried to spin everything, saying I'd embarrassed her, that I was overreacting, that family works through things. When I didn't respond, the sweetness snapped. She shifted to cutting remarks, tearing into every insecurity she'd ever used against me. It was the same pattern she'd perfected for years. Warmth, then guilt, then venom. Colt joined in soon after, slamming a cabinet and announcing that if I didn't hand Rusty over, I could pack my things and get out immediately. He wasn't bluffing, he wanted me gone, but only after he got what he came for. I kept my face neutral while my phone recorded every word. Their demands, their threats, every casual admission of what they'd done. It all went into a neat archive that I tucked away mentally for later. Somewhere in the middle of their ranting, it hit me with a clarity I'd never felt before. This wasn't just another awful moment. This was the culmination of years spent being treated like a placeholder in my own home. Rusty was the trigger, but the wound had always been deeper. I wasn't going to explain myself to people who had already decided I didn't matter. I walked back to my room, zipped my bag, and picked up Rusty's leash. There was no argument, no final scene. I moved with the kind of calm that comes only after a choice has already been made. Before leaving, I set a letter on the kitchen table, brief, blunt, and impossible for them to twist. It listed the money they'd taken over the years, the things they'd hidden, the way they'd treated me, and the evidence I now had backing it all. Then I walked out without waiting for footsteps behind me. Rusty stayed close as we stepped into the fresh air, and for the first time in a long time, the world felt bigger than the walls I was leaving behind. Tessa opened her door before I even knocked twice, taking one look at Rusty tucked against my leg before pulling us inside. She didn't ask for details right away. She just cleared space, handed me a blanket, and said I could stay as long as I needed. Her bluntness had always made people uncomfortable, but right then it felt like the safest thing in the world. I set my bag down in the small guest room, watching Rusty curl into the corner like he wasn't sure peace was real yet. The next few days were a quiet reset. I picked up extra shifts, sent out resumes, and started putting what little money I had back into a separate account. Rusty slowly stopped flinching every time someone opened a door. He stayed close but relaxed more, sleeping deeper, eating better. Seeing him regain a bit of trust helped me breathe again, but I knew the silence coming from my family was temporary. They'd never handled losing control well. Tessa noticed the tension in my shoulders and finally pushed one evening, telling me that running wasn't enough. She said if I wanted them out of my life for good, I needed something they couldn't twist. A legal trail. The suggestion made my stomach tighten, but she wasn't wrong. What they did wasn't just cruel, it was criminal. I sat at her kitchen table with her laptop open, reviewing everything I had collected. The recordings, the photos, the messages, the cash receipt from the property. The next morning, I walked into the police station with Rusty's adoption papers in one hand and my evidence in the other. Filing the report felt surreal, my voice steady as I listed what happened, naming both Colt and Marla without hesitation. The officer listened carefully, took notes, and logged the case under theft and cruelty, promising follow-up. Walking out, the weight on my chest felt lighter. Not gone but shifted. For the first time I wasn't just reacting. I was protecting myself and Rusty in a way they couldn't undo. The calls started the same afternoon the report was filed. Marla's number flashed across my phone over and over, each attempt more frantic than the last, but I let every one of them ring out. She wasn't reaching out because she cared, she was scared. I could picture the moment it happened. The knock at her door, the uniform standing on the porch, the realization that this time her words wouldn't be enough to twist the situation in her favor. A few hours later, Tessa sent me a message saying Colt had blown up at work after an officer arrived to speak with him. Apparently he tried to act confused at first, play it off like there must have been some mistake, but that didn't last long. People overheard enough to piece things together, and his temper only made it worse. Then Ward Callum started talking. The detective handling the case reached out to him, and instead of protecting Marla and Colt, he told the truth. He confirmed the transfer, repeated exactly what they told him, and made it clear he'd been paid with full understanding of what they were doing. The moment his statement was logged, their version of events started falling apart. That's when Marla shifted to damage control. She called relatives, claimed I was ungrateful, dramatic, unstable. Every old insult she leaned on when she needed an audience. But this time when people reached out to me, I didn't bother defending myself with emotion. I sent them the recordings, the photos, the receipts, the audio of Colt bragging, the clip of Ward naming them. It didn't take long. The whisper chain turned against them. Excuses evaporated. Even the relatives who usually backed Marla grew quiet. With every truth exposed, their narrative cracked a little more, and for the first time they had to sit in the mess they created, without anyone rushing in to repair their image. Colt's situation unraveled faster than anyone expected. Word spread around his workplace about why the police had shown up, and the version people repeated was blunt. He'd traded his sister's dog for quick cash. No one cared about the excuses he tried to throw around. By the end of the week, shifts were cut, co-workers avoided him, and management made it clear they were reviewing his future with the company. The bruise to his pride was almost louder than the legal trouble he was juggling. Marla didn't fare much better. The women she spent years impressing with half-truths and gossip stopped picking up her calls. A few who heard the recordings I shared through relatives stepped back entirely, horrified at the way she'd spoken to me. She tried pretending nothing had changed, showing up to social events with the same forced smile, but people moved away from her instead of toward her. Every circle she depended on closed quietly, leaving her with no one willing to repeat her version of events. The fallout hit the kids too. The phones that had supposedly justified everything had to go back when Colt realized he needed money for the attorney he suddenly couldn't live without. Liam and Grady threw tantrums loud enough for half the neighborhood to hear, and according to a cousin who still kept me updated, Marla blamed me for that too, loudly, dramatically, and without a hint of self-reflection. I stayed out of it entirely. I didn't block the updates that drifted my way, but I didn't chase them either. Watching the consequences settle over them didn't bring satisfaction. It just brought clarity. For once, the pattern was reversing. Their actions were finally circling back to them instead of landing on me. My energy stayed focused somewhere else. Learning how to breathe again in therapy, showing up to work without dread, and helping Rusty unlearn every flinch and hesitation he'd picked up. His tail wagged more. He slept stretched out instead of curled tight. I started sleeping better too. Every message Marla attempted to send stayed unopened. Every call Colt tried to make sank into silence. I wasn't interested in explanations or apologies shaped to protect them. Their world was shifting because of choices they made, and for the first time in my life I didn't feel responsible for fixing any of it. The gathering was supposed to be a simple birthday dinner for one of my uncles. Nothing dramatic, nothing heated. I didn't go. Everyone already knew I wouldn't. Still, word reached me quickly afterward. The moment Marla walked in, the tension in the room shifted. No one greeted her with the usual warmth, and for the first time she couldn't pretend everything was normal. My aunts had already heard the recordings. My uncles had seen the proof passed around group chats. The truth had circulated too widely for her to control the story. When one of her sisters finally confronted her, asking why she'd done something so cruel, Marla tried to launch into her usual performance, claiming I'd twisted things, that I'd exaggerated, that she'd only done what she thought was best. But no one let her slide this time. People interrupted. People questioned. People pushed back. Every excuse she tossed out fell flat, and the circle she'd always relied on didn't rush in to comfort her. Colt cracked first. According to a cousin, he put his head in his hands and admitted he'd gone too far, that he shouldn't have listened, that he never expected everything to blow up this badly. It wasn't a complete admission of guilt, but it was more honesty than he'd shown in years. Marla didn't appreciate it. She snapped at him for making her look worse, as if the truth hadn't already been carved into the room before he spoke. When it became clear no one was jumping to defend her, she shifted straight to blame, insisting I'd deliberately set her up, that none of them knew the full story, that she was the victim. No one agreed. Someone told her plainly that she needed to take responsibility. Instead, she grabbed her purse, cursed the whole room for turning against her, and walked out. That exit left a crack in the family that everyone felt but no one planned to fix. Later that night, my phone buzzed with a voicemail from her, long enough to overflow the transcription window. Her voice shifted from shouting to sobbing to pleading, looping through contradictions like she was grasping at whatever might pull me back under her control. I listened to the first 5 seconds, heard the familiar rage in her tone, and stopped it cold. I hit delete before she could reach the part where she pretended to soften. I didn't need to hear the rest. I already knew the pattern and I wasn't stepping into it again. Eden unlocked the gate to her new place, a small yard waiting for Rusty to explore. She stood in the doorway, steady, finally rooted somewhere that belonged only to them. The space was quiet, calm, untouched by the chaos she'd left behind. Her routine shifted into something gentler. Work, rest, long walks, and evenings spent rebuilding the stability she'd once thought impossible. One afternoon, her phone lit up with a short message from Colt. A simple acknowledgement of harm and a muted attempt at making things right. She didn't answer. She saved it not for connection, but for confirmation that she had stepped beyond the version of herself who once would have rushed to fix everything. Marla never reached out. No apology, no explanation. Just a fading presence that slipped out of Eden's world without ceremony. The silence was its own closure, the final separation from a family she had stopped chasing. Eden sat at her desk, paperwork spread out, sunlight sliding across the floor. She let herself breathe, deeply and fully, realizing she no longer flinched at every notification or shadow of old obligations. She wasn't surviving anymore. She was choosing her life piece by piece, rebuilding on her terms. Rusty dozed at her feet, healthy and safe, his soft snoring filling the room. She reached down, brushing a hand through his fur, grateful for the one constant who never wavered. For the first time in years she felt whole. Do you think I made the right choice walking away for good, or should I have given them one last chance? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you want more stories like mine, don't forget to subscribe.